This image displays two issues which have always been a problem in our photographic editing, and they're not uncommon. It's when the subject and the background require editing independently of each other. Now that task has been made much easier and far quicker by Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom masks. Now I think we can demonstrate that in under 5 minutes. Now we don't have the ability to mask the background directly, but we can open the mask options and we can select the subject. Once the subject has been selected, then from this point here, we can inverse that mask, which effectively gives us our background mask. We can also subtract or we can add to these auto masks, but in the interest of brevity, let's go with exactly what we have. So with the background masks, we can make the adjustments we think it requires. So as I touch the exposure, the overlay will disappear and I can take this down to be quite dark. I don't want the shadows to be really dark, so maybe I'll push the shadows up a little bit. But I do want the background to be quite dark so the bird stands out nicely. We could go down and do something with the clarity and the dehaze, even dropping them down if we wanted to soften the background. But once again, in the interests of brevity, let's leave it at that point at the moment. Go to the top where we're going to select another mask. And I'm going to select the subject once again. But this time we have no need to inverse that subject. We're going to be making adjustments just on the bird. Now I think the underside of the bird, particularly the tail of the bird, could do with the shadows lifting. So I'm going to step the shadows up. But then I'm just going to look at the bird. What does it need? I think we could do with the highlights down a little bit. We could possibly do with maybe a little contrast, drop the blacks a little bit, raise the whites here, just to give it a bit more sparkle. Maybe we could warm the bird just a little bit. And maybe even step up the saturation to make it really stand out from the background. Now, within a very short space of time, we've made quite a difference to this image, and it's all down to the speed of masks. Now we've reached this point in just 3 minutes and 20 seconds, and during that time, of course, I've had to explain exactly what I'm doing. Could we do more to this image? Yes, of course we could. I think the next stage would be to zoom into the bird and maybe do something with the highlights here. So I'm going to go up and select my mask again. This time I'm going to select a brush. I'm going to decide what I want to do before I actually start the masking. I know I want to bring the highlights down and I know I want to bring the exposure down. So now I'm going to have a look. I'll make the brush a little bigger. Now I can start brushing over this area, and as you can see I can bring the tones back where we appear to have almost lost them. So we could move about the bird and just take a couple of minutes to do any work around here that we felt was appropriate. I'll hit Ctrl-0 to fit the image back on screen because we could even do something with the shadows. Let's do that next. Let's go back to the Create New Mask. We'll have another brush. Once again, down to the settings, what do I want to do? Well, I want to lift the shadows and the exposure a little bit. So now, if I zoom in a bit, if I wanted to lift the tones here, as I gently brush over them, you can notice over on the right hand side, I've got the flow of this tool set down to 20%. It makes my movement and the work I'm doing here quite delicate, and to be honest, that is always the best way to work. So within a short space of time, using the new masks in Photoshop and Adobe Camera Raw, also in Lightroom, we've made a terrific difference to this image because we can adjust the bird or the foreground completely independently to the background. Now this video is just over 5 minutes long, and yet we've created 4 main masks. A few months ago it would have been beyond many photographers to achieve this, certainly within a time many were prepared to spend. We've done it in just a few minutes.